on this computer. Hello and welcome. So today on the Chakra Meditation podcast, I'm joined by Dr. Mahsa Hojat-Khoshniyat. I said it so perfectly before. Mahsa Hojat-Khoshniyat. And Mahsa is a psychotherapist. Welcome, Mahsa. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. Hello to your listeners and viewers. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's good because it's not often that I have a doctor, a psychotherapist on my podcast. I tend to talk to people who are in the more alternative fields. So, but I know that you are, really open to energetic work and to all the kind of stuff that I do and that my listeners are interested in. So what is beautiful is to get a sort of a scientific psychotherapist, I can't even say my words today, psychotherapist view on all of this, this work that we all are trying to do. And the main topic that I want to kind of dance around today is that of relationships. Yeah, this is a big one. We all have, when I am introducing people to the chakras, which is obviously the work that I do, I often use the aspect of relationships in our lives to explain. So, relationship with family, one-to-one relationships, relationship with work, with money, with food, with friendships, with our own voice, with ourselves, with spirit, So these are, I just glibly say that, and it's like that's our entire world in a nutshell, those relationships.
Absolutely.
So I don't know. Talk to me about let's start with where you came from and how you got to be where you are. A little bit about you, first of all. Let's start there.
Sure. Thank you for that. I really appreciate being here and I appreciate the space you're providing for me and the openness to have me, considering that I bring in a different perspective to the same thing, I think. So I come from Iran. I moved here now 23 years ago. Um, I come from a beautiful, amazing country with a rich culture and beautiful environment and good people who are run by a very repressive dictatorship of basically we have the best and the worst in our country, the best of the people and the worst of the government.
Mm.
I grew up in an environment that I got to see both how amazing and wonderful human beings can be and how damaging, cruel, and awful, almost monstrous human beings can be.
Yeah.
And that mixture of the good and bad, growing up to learn to thrive for the good and to give back the good. So when I moved here, I moved here for opportunities. I was going to university back there. I was becoming a nurse, but the window of opportunities were limited. I was, going to have a mediocre life. And I was offered the option of coming and start from zero, absolutely broke, zero, nothing. Didn't know that I didn't know the language. I thought I did till I got here and start from zero, like go back to community college. Nothing that I had done was accepted and rebuild. And that's when my journey started because I started studying psychology. Then I found out that the work I wanted to do was called social work, not psychology. So going to social work. And then I remember this conversation with my professor. He was like, well, I want to be a therapist. And he's like, no, you need to go and work in, Department of Children and Family Services with the kids that are removed from their families. And I'm like, that's not what I want to do. And he's like, no, but that's what you need to do. And he was so right, because from there, and then I worked at the jail, I worked at community mental health. I got a very interesting education about people. I'm a rebel, so I did therapy anywhere I went, no matter what the job title was. But I got to experience children and their parents, then see these children grow up and go into jails and prisons and then come out and witness those, because I've worked in men's jail, those mothers, sisters, and wives of those some men that I had worked with to then come out and see them being severely affected by their traumas to the point of having severe mental health issues, to then going into addiction. And it was almost like I was getting an education on life and people that are in it. When I look back, I'm like, there's not a population that I haven't met. There's not a group of people that I haven't heard their stories. And I feel like it was such a complete circle.
Yeah.
So by the time I had my child, and I was like, I can't be 8 to 9, I mean, 8 to 5 or what have you. I need to be raising my child. And I went into private practice. I have had lived and experienced so much through other people's lives. So it was a very easy transition, probably one of the easiest jobs I had, right? Being in private practice. And then seeing that all that education, I'm seeing the same people, same problems, different responses because of the different environments they grew up in. So it was really the interplay of human beings, the world they live in, and the system that impedes on them. Basically, every single relationship that led them to be who they were and how they responded. Well, in the midst of all of this, I love studying. I'm a forever student. Such a forever student. I loved neurobiology. And there's this new, I'm not very well versed in the whole world, but at least in US, and I'm sure in Europe, there's this interest in neurons, neurobiology, what's happening to our brain, trauma and brain. And so people like Peter Levine, Bessel van der Kolk, Eckhart, all of these people talk about these things I learned through experience, but from a neurobiology standpoint.
Yeah. Fascinating. So yeah, it is amazing and wonderful that the scientific world is catching up with that more human side of actually what is going on, because it makes it irrefutable. It makes it sort of solid and concrete and really important to just sort of pin it down, I guess, if what I'm trying to get at. Yeah. So, I mean, the number of different relationships that you have witnessed and that you have sort of helped through, what is the thing that you find is the most common? So, everyone has got some kind of relationship issue. And, I hark back to the list of types of relationships that one can have. It's not just your romantic relationships. What is the relationship that you find is the one that you find is most common or most prevalent at the moment in your work?
In a world that we've gone away from our human instinct, the survival instinct. See, when we were cave people, we found each other, built society, built little collections, communities, societies, countries, so on and so forth, because we are social beings. Nowadays, we're individuals, separate in our socialness. So the biggest problem I see is that lack of how we need each other, how important relationships really are. And that's a relationship with ourselves and others of any shape and form. At the base of it is trust and safety that we have lost within ourselves, to ourselves or others. How many times do you see a new mother who says, well, let me read this book or that book and that book to see how to be a mother? But if we really stop, we know exactly what to do, because we're trained biologically to know, but we don't trust ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, it comes back to that thing that that I love, that saying, which is, everything you have, everything you need, you have within you. Everything you need to have to do whatever it is you want to do, whether it be a parent or do a job, or you have it there. It's just trusting that you have it. Is so why have we lost that ability to trust ourselves?
We lost faith in humanity, I think. in the world of science and technology and learning and being productive and being independent, we lost the simple things, which is emotional connection, emotional help with ourselves and others. My husband and I love to watch this. There's this little town, not even a town, very, very few people live there. This is a video, this is a movie of them, their daily life. They wake up, they make breakfast, they go get their lunch ready, sit down and have their lunch. The whole day is about self-sufficiency. And we love it so much because it's such a true connection with nature and living. I remember I told him they are living. They're living. Their day is spent on just eating, basically, getting
Yeah.
their stuff, taking care of the farm, eating.
Yeah.
But that was a true living. They're sitting together, enjoying a meal they just made.
Yeah.
Right? We don't do that. We're
No.
so focused on what is the next thing we need to do? Where is the next place I need to go? What is the next achievement I want to have?
Yeah. I mean, this what comes up for me when you say that is like this very sad situation that we as humans find ourselves in now, because back in, when you say it's a tiny little village in a rural place, that it makes it possible. We just can't all live in that tiny little rural place where we have enough space to grow our vegetables year round and live in a community. That, some people choose to go and find that, but the majority of us have to live in a city. And if we want to eat, we have to get a job that pays us money so we can go to the shop and buy all of the things that we need. This is very root chakra stuff, like this survival, this right to have what you need in order to survive. And when you're living that simple life, as you describe it, that is the way that humans were sort of evolved, and we've grown up too fast. We've grown up very fast into this mad, chaotic world where having more is seen as better and doing more. And it's a very confusing thing when you just want to be, you just want to, rather than do all the time, which is what we're so programmed to do, to live in this very masculine, go productive, results driven, world. It's very hard to take a step back and just find that really simple relationship with yourself and with life.
Yes, I think it all goes back to that relationship. I mean, obviously, clearly, I'm not, making my own vegetables, right? I have a PhD, I work a lot, I have, a business that I run. So I recognize that. But even within that, right, I have no problem with being a high achiever. I'm on myself.
Yeah.
It's the idea of having a relationship with the world in it, right? You can be the highest achiever you can in the world. You can be the CEO of the biggest company, Fortune 500, whatever they call it, company. But do you have a relationship with the person that opens the door for you? Do you see that human being and say, hey, good morning, how are you doing? How are the kids? So on and so forth. Or do you just go upstairs and have a relationship with the computer and the email that is coming in? It's transforming our view of human beings, right? Seeing everyone as worthy of having a conversation. Everything, right? That flower that is on your way to work. We know that flowers respond and start to bloom more and become more vibrant when we speak with them. It's a living thing, right? So how much are we really living in this world? I'm very happy with people who are very successful and engaged in their roles, but are they also engaged in meaningful relationships? That is my next step, right? My next step is to coach and support and help people who have achieved all that.
Yeah.
Not truly happy.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of that around, there's a lot of isolation, I think,
Yes.
in this world. We live very isolated lives. You can live in, I often say that, living in London is can be one of the biggest cities in the world, is surrounded by millions of people. It can be the loneliest place on the planet. You know, we're so separated by the way we live and by fear of opening ourselves up to other people that we don't know. You know, like we might have a neighbor who we've never talked to. I mean, it's when you put it like that and you go, yeah, well, they're a bit this, or I don't, you know, they're never around, or they're a bit strange, or, you know, I don't like the music they play, or, you know, it's like all of this stuff that we come up with as a reason not to engage with people that we live in close proximity with. But there's also such joy in doing that.
We're afraid to trust.
Mm.
I remember, go ahead.
No, I was going to move on to like that and social isolation, and then like the anxiety that surrounds that as well. Because I feel like there's an anxiety pandemic. You know, the pandemic made people feel anxious for a start, but I feel like whilst the pandemic's kind of sort of disappeared, faded away somewhat, the anxiety still remains.
Think about it this way. I love talking about the caveman time because because a lot of so the reason I talk about caveman time is because we have this limbic system in our brain, right? Amygdala, hippocampus, different sections, then cerebellum go down to your whole spine, polyvagal, vein, so on and so forth, nerve actually, that in essence remembers what it was to be primitive. It is our survival mechanism. And what it does is that it evaluates danger. Anxiety is basically evaluation of danger. Anxiety, what I call, is that in the today's day and age, is a false alarm system, is an overactivation of amygdala. Stop me anytime if you need me to explain that more. But when you have this part of the brain that perceives the world and decides, is it dangerous or not? If it is dangerous, I need you to start fighting, freezing, running, or just getting along with it and, you know, do whatever it takes to survive. The body starts reacting. You get filled with adrenaline, you get filled with cortisol, you get tingling in your arms and legs, you get lightheaded, your vision changes. Depending on the nervous system that went into effect, sympathetic, parasympathetic together at the same time, a different set of chemical and hormonal reactions happen in the body intended to save you. If there was a true danger, a bear was coming at you, those set of reactions would have saved you. The problem is no bear is coming. So the body is reacting, there is a bear, but the mind, the cortical cortex, cannot understand that. Cortical cortex is the top layer of the brain, the more complex. So the brain says, well, I don't know what you're doing, body. What is wrong with you? And the body goes into gear even higher. You are not listening, there is a danger. And the brain says, no, there isn't. We get stuck with high levels of cortisol adrenaline.
Right.
We feel like we're about to die, when in reality, it would have been so good if you're running super fast to take those short breaths, because you get a ton of oxygen. But standing here and I can't breathe, my brain remembers another threat of suffocation. The panic goes up. That's why we have anxiety.
There's so many layers to it. I mean, you know, I've always known and talked about, you know, this you know, the fight and flight and, you know, the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems that, you know, are overstimulated by the trauma of sitting in a traffic jam, being late to a meeting. It's like, you know, you can't run away, you can't start a fight. Well, some people do, but, you know, but it's interesting that there's layers. I've never thought about it like that there's layers that come on it on top when you're having this interaction within the brain. I didn't realize that was going on as well. That's a really interesting on top of, and that's why it layers up towards like anxiety, a panic attack. I guess that's what we're talking about when you get to that level. Am I right?
You said something very interesting. Yes. That's exactly how panic attack happens. Sitting in the traffic, going back to the relational aspect of things, being late for a meeting, causing a full-on panic attack, being perceived as a threat to survival. Why? Is the question we never ask ourselves.
Yeah.
Why is it being late to that meeting is going to affect my survival? Is it I'm afraid of being fired, and how realistic is it? Is it that the work environment is unsafe? Or is it that I'm afraid of rejection because it's something I experienced early on in life?
Mm.
And that's what I'm responding to, a threat that is much younger, at a younger age I experienced, and now is being triggered. Versus you have people who say, well, hey, I'm going to be late. Put me on the speaker. Because I don't have that fear. Right? I mean, I do. But the person doesn't have that fear. They don't think about, oh my God, the whole room is going to look negatively as me. As, you know, when I went in front of the class and I couldn't speak and everybody laughed at me.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a really, you know, when we're in that state, when you're sitting in that traffic jam and, you know, you're going to be late, and the panic starts to rise and you start to get anxious and all the physical symptoms start to happen. And let's not say that you're going to have a full-blown panic attack, but you're just feeling like really super stressed and this is not a fun place to be. You don't have always the mindfulness to bring yourself back and go, so hang on, why is it that I'm feeling this way? Why am I reacting this way? Why can't I just call Wendy at the office and tell her I'll be 10 minutes late? Why is there so much fear? We don't get to a place where we can ask ourselves that question in that moment. So I mean, I'm tempted to just go, why is that? Why can't we do that? But I suppose it's just the brain overriding everything, I guess.
Two things. If it's so when we think about limbic system, if with the full-on panic attack, right? The limbic system has taken over. So it doesn't allow the cortical cortex to send any messages.
Okay.
The messages are being sent, but they're not getting to the body. That's when you do your breathing, meditation, relaxation, guided imagery, whatever you need to do. Listen to music, pull down the window and might look at something nice to calm the body down. Right? Primitive stuff. We're trying to calm the body down. There's no complexity going on. But when it is not that, the fact that we don't take the time to consistently have this conversation with ourselves is because we avoid our inner child. We avoid our own vulnerable, sensitive parts of ourselves because we don't have time for ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? Otherwise, we can say, oh, hey, what is this about? What is it triggering? Why am I so anxious? What am I so upset?
Yeah. Now this is the crux of what, you know, of all relationship, you know, in its relationship with romance, with, you know, with family, very specifically, with food, with money, with all of these, with the self, all comes down to these childhood, you know, the programming, as I always say, the programming and the conditioning that we were given as children. And so coming back to do that inner child work, what does inner child work look like to you as a psychotherapist? I'm really interested to know.
Let's first explain what is inner child, at least in my opinion. Excuse me. Imagine yourself having 3 different sections of your personality. Your vulnerable, emotional, impulsive urges, feelings, desires, wants. The more childlike side of you. The moments in your childhood that you're stuck, in a sense. The things that didn't make sense and you didn't get to understand, have catharsis, and like grow out of it, right? The moments that things didn't go well, and so the brain is stuck and loops over it over and over. The adult who is the person you are today, and the parents, the influences, the people who told you what to do all along. Oftentimes, there's a fight between what it needs to be and what I was told and how I should be, and who I am, what I like, what are my experiences. And these two forces fighting, battling each other. But as we grow up, this adult us needs to become the referee, the balancing act between these two pieces. Yes, I know you want some ice cream, but right now we're not doing ice cream. We're gonna eat a meal first, then we have an ice cream. Versus, how dare you want ice cream? Don't you know you're not supposed to have ice cream, right? The adult is the negotiator that says, okay, both of you calm down. Yes, you have a right. Ice cream is yummy, but yes, you're right. We're gonna do it after dinner, right? We have to raise our adult. But we can't raise our adult if we've never been properly raised, which is the case of most of us, because everyone has some sort of a trauma that is transferred to their own child, unintentionally, including myself.
Yeah.
So how do we heal is through building this relationship, which I think that's why therapy is so important, where somebody else gets to do that work for you. The therapist isn't the one who's eating the ice cream, and nor is it affected by it. So can say, hey, yes, I can see the ice cream sounds wonderful. But let's think about what it can do to you. Because I don't have a personal involvement. I'm not going to get affected. Therefore, by being out, I can see things in a way you can't. So I can teach you. It's called borrowing ego, borrowing my observing ego.
Okay.
You borrow my observing ego as I take care of your child and set limits with your parents. And then you learn how to do that for yourself. And that's when therapy is done. Your problems aren't, but your need for that other is done.
Yeah. So so basically you're saying that it's being led to leading yourself to understanding how to have that inner dialogue between the parent that you are now as an adult and the inner child. And when people have like a childhood trauma, say their parents got divorced and it was really traumatic and hard for them, and they have an abandonment fear, say, really standard situation, you know, a lot of kids, you know, sometimes it's more rare that one, you know, kids' parents are together than not, but it still affects the kids in a lot of ways. So this is a big deal for a lot of people. You know, how do you get to that point where you can let go of that wound that you have, because it's such a long held and deep one?
Think about what wounds are. Wounds are when they are untreated or improperly treated, so they don't heal.
Yeah.
The idea is to revisit that experience, the emotions attached to it, or the experience itself. Not everyone wants or can remember things. It is not in their best interest of their psyche. Therefore, the psyche blocks it and says, we're not going to remember this specific thing. No problem. We can work with the emotions that it caused, or remembering the event. The idea is to create closure. I'm going to share this story with you. I worked with this man. He had bipolar. Mom had committed suicide. Dad committed suicide years later. Horrible history. And he was consistently suicidal. The most crucial session we had is when one day we were talking about how he found out his mother died. And he talked about his mother was using drugs. So she overdosed intentionally, but she did overdose. And he talked about being very young, 6, 7, something like that. And he remembered being by the tree outside of his house looking for his watch and not being able to find it. And I made the association that you were looking for that watch so desperately because you didn't want it to go home, because you knew what you were going to see. He knew. He had walked out knowing that his mother was almost like dying. And his obsession over the watch was his attempt to avoid finding out that truth. And when I said this was never yours to carry, you couldn't have saved her. That wasn't for you to do. A transformation happened. All of a sudden, he reconnected with old family members who had loved him all along and he had no idea. Who said to him, we wish we knew where you were because we wanted to come and take you away. All of a sudden, he wasn't all alone in the world, looking for his watch.
Because you've given him permission to not be responsible for what he experienced. Yeah.
And it's interesting that when that happens, I've had that happen with a few different clients. It's different when you say it's not your fault, it's not your fault. Versus saying, showing up to that child they once were and talking to that child and saying, me that you trust is telling you, no, this was never yours. It's almost like they unlock. Both people left. Both people ended up doing so much better in their lives. Never ever went to continue the exploration. But because of that closure, they had permission, and both of them expressed a lot of happiness. I heard from other people. One of them reached out later. My husband was his coach. So checked in with him and he's like, oh, I'm doing fantastic. I'm doing so much better. And then I put the two and two together. Okay, you just started to feel better after our last session. And the other guy, his daughter reached out to me and said, you won't believe it. My father at 60 years old has reconnected with old family members who said that we wish we knew where you were. They weren't ready to come back to me because I held their pain.
Yeah.
But they were free.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very it's extraordinary how this inner child stuff that we hold on to impacts our relationships. They had that client of yours, had rejected relationships because they just hadn't dealt with the stuff. And this is what I think that the majority of people who listen to this podcast, and myself certainly, we're trying to do the work so that we can become whole, so that we can be free from this stuff and understand our inner child. And it's really lovely to hear you say that, it's not something, and you said this before we started recording, but it's not something that you should even try, it's not something that you can do really on your own, or should try to do on your own. You need to have somebody there to hold the space for you, which I think is really important. And this big stuff like this, you can go to, you can explore it on your own, but you do need to have your hand held. I feel like with all personal development, spiritual development, personal growth, any of this kind of stuff that expands ourselves, it's very rare to be able to do this on your own. You need to have some kind of community, which is why courses are so fantastic, like learning about the chakras or with a group of people, and you're all like comparing notes and learning together and going, oh, yeah, we're all having this discovery. But it's the same when you're doing this really difficult stuff, this really fundamental stuff. And it's just lovely to know that there are people there who can hold you in that space, because it's vital.
It is. It's really vital. It's this idea of titrating. And I think Dan Siegel or Peter Levine, one of them, talks about this. You cannot go into the trauma all the way back. Okay, let's go from the beginning and start to review everything. That's not the point. I have a 5-year-old and she loves to watch Frozen too. And there's this song, All Is Found, that says, don't go so far deep and you will not be able to come out, basically. I forgot the specifics. And it's talking about going back to the memories, but that if you go too far in the river of memories, you cannot come back out.
Yeah.
Same with trauma.
Yeah.
There is a reason the brain puts on these blocks.
Yeah. fascinating that we have this capability within us to really block off trauma, and to it comes out, the sort of the symptom of it, the smell of it, if you like, comes out, but not the actual trauma. So you can be behaving in a way, you can have patterns in relationships that you go, oh, this keeps happening, people keep cheating on me, or I just don't seem to be able to hold on to this relationship, and I don't know why. It's because there's a trauma, there's a something that's happened that's facilitating this behavior. There's lots of big nodding going on from Mahsa. It's very gratifying. Yeah. So doing this work to find out what those traumas are, because you're not going to, how do you change relationship patterns? That's another big question.
By understanding why you allow yourself, not that it is your fault. It is never someone's fault to be abused. But it's the fact that somewhere down deep inside, they don't believe anything else is possible. Right? That they become victims of these cycles and they stay the victim. Now, leaving an abusive relationship is extremely hard. It is dangerous and it's very difficult, and it can happen to anybody. There's not a one profile of the victims, but there's one profile of the abusers. But if there's this pattern of being in abusive relationships, the question becomes, what did you experience in early relationships that give you this impression that this is normal, that you don't deserve something different?
Yeah.
That you tolerate this over and over again. And oftentimes I hear people say, because I deserve it. And I'm like, why?
No,
Oh, because my dad did it, my brother did it, my mom did it. I am not one of those people who deserve better. And that's this work of what they did was them, not related to you. And that's when they start to say, oh, okay, now I can ask for more. Now I can, expect more. Now I can say no when I'm out of those sets of relationships that are abusive. When I'm free, now I'm able to say, okay, I have to be careful. And who, how to know the telltale signs.
Yeah. The red flags, as they are known in the common world. Yeah. I mean, it's a fascinating look into, we've talked about anxiety in relationships and inner child stuff. We have these big relationships, and it's interesting because all of that harks back really to the inner child, to that trauma that we have experienced in some way, shape, or form. And and I often say I think there's a trauma with a big T and there's trauma with a little t.
Yep.
And we've all experienced some level of trauma with a small t, and those who have experienced trauma with a big T probably get quite cross when people with the trauma with a little t go, oh, about my trauma. But we have experienced something that has, even if it was you were sent away to school, like super privileged, what the hell is your problem? Why are you complaining? You got sent to an amazing school. Yeah, but my parents sent me away. Didn't they love me? There's so many different layers of where we get to in our childhood traumas, big and little t's, that I think that doing this work is so important because it impacts every relationship that we have, whether they be friendships or romantic or family. That's what I was coming back to. So your family, who's potentially caused these issues unintentionally, the majority of the time, especially those little t traumas, how do we go about fixing those kind of the relationships with our families when we've done a bit of work and we start to realize, okay, that behavior, that action actually had a really profound impact on me? How do you go back to your family to deal with that? Or do you not? You just process it on your own?
Well, it depends on the family. It depends on the relationships, and it depends on the capacity of the people we're reaching. There's this concept of intergenerational transmission of trauma, where, let's say, the mother gets bit by a dog. Every time she sees a dog, she screams. Now the child is afraid of a dog, with having never had any experience of a dog, with this, amazing, beautiful thing. I like dogs, so I'm biased.
Me too.
So what is happening, and the mother never said to the child, don't be around dogs, right? But her reaction communicated that to the child. So we all have this kind of like chain reactions of what we went through and how it affected us, and then how we repeat. So when we, the last generation, ends up breaking that cycle and starting to do something different, one is recognizing how you impacted me, whether you intended or not. The impact is there, and I have a right to say that I was impacted. But now that I'm impacted, can I see you as a human with your own set of issues? That's where forgiveness comes in. But only after the anger is expressed, whether it's through letter writing, therapy, collages, whatever way to get that anger out. Then is the look at who are you and what did you go through? I often ask my clients, what was your parents' childhood like? Because that's when I get an understanding of what they might have gone through or their psychology, to then be able to translate that to, I think when your dad said X, Y, and Z, he was talking about his childhood, not your reality. Right? When your dad said be aware of dogs, he was talking about the fact that he was bitten and his reality was dogs are like that, not this fluffy, beautiful thing that you're dealing with. And then the person is able to say, oh, this is not mine, putting it back. After, again, very important that the anger is expressed, then they're able to look back and say, I feel bad for them. I see the person they are and the suffering they went through. Doesn't make it okay. Like, it's this duality. Yes, you're responsible for what you did to me, but I also can see why you did that to me.
Yeah.
Some people can take it. And you can go and say, so-and-so, you did this to me. This is how I impacted you. And the person can say, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Deepens the relationship. But some people can't, right? The idea of blocks, like, I cannot deal with this.
Yeah.
Then you love them from distance and you engage with them for as much as they can. Down deep inside, grieving the loss of that deeper connection.
I want to go back to something you said, and I don't know why, but I feel drawn to it. Because you said once you have, you've had this understanding, and then you have to express your anger, and then you can move on towards the forgiving and so on. I'm just wondering, as a psychotherapist, how you recommend people express their anger.
So it depends on what the person wants to do. I have one client that I have her go to like escape rooms, and she does these paintings, right? Like throw the paint at the canvas.
Yeah.
Or I say, like, go break, like set up a safe space, make sure everything is safe, you're not going to get hurt, your walls are not going to be destroyed. Start breaking things and then turn them into something. The breaking things alone is not enough, right? You break and then you transform it into something. It's that closure that comes with. It's not just destructive, it's healing. I have them write letters that may or may not send to the person. I have them come into therapy and talk to me about it. I have them draw or paint or whatever form of, collages that they like, whatever that makes them feel better. I had this woman throw, like, in my office, stuffed animals at the wall. Oh, the person, like, hit a punch bag, whatever you need to do.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, I think it's just really interesting to ask you what your thing is, how, the sort of various methods and stuff that you use, because I know is a sort of when you're working kind of somatically, you're working with the body and as I do with energy and so on. If someone says to me they're really angry, I ask them where it is, where their anger sits within their body, because that will tell me a lot, you know, in relation to which chakra it's sitting in, like what that anger is representing or how it could be expressed. And I love that a lot of your fixes, if you like, your solutions for anger are creative. And I think that, you know, our creative centers are around the hips in the sacral chakra. That's an obvious creative area. So it is where we hold our creation, but it's also where we hold our emotions in the hips. And then the other place is the throat. We hold a lot of creation in our creativity in our throat and our jaw. And you think about that sort of like anger that we express through our jaw, that we feel it in the throat. And I find that that's probably a common place. You know, if you're feeling anger, you're unlikely to be feeling it in your hips unless you get a chronic hip issue because you've just suppressed that anger for so long. But I love that destructive, but then also creative. But I'm totally down with the going into a room and smashing the living hell out of a bust up television just to get it all out. I'm down for that. I don't.
And there's a purpose behind it. You're not just busting a television.
Yeah.
But play with fantasy.
Yeah.
Right? Being able to, I had this woman do show up in, she has this memory of being abused. And I had her see herself, see the abuser, see her adult self step in, do whatever she was gonna do, and she told me about it, and take the child and walk out. Now, this is all fantasy. We were very clear that this is not gonna happen in reality. But she walked out and she said, I feel so much better. I was, see, and it's okay. It's fantasy.
Well, the power of the mind to imagine and feel the emotions and for all that to be real. I mean, I don't know how many times I've read it in various places, and it's usually to do with manifestation, you know, people doing manifesting is, you know, you have to really feel into the feeling of having the whatever it is that you want, the new job or whatever, like what would that feel like? Not just imagine having it and doing it, but what would it feel like? And because there's something around, first of all, there's the connecting with the energy and attracting that in. Yes, good. But there's also this thing about the brain not actually being able to sometimes separate reality from imagination. So the brain already thinks it's happened because you've imagined it and visualized it so hard. As a neurobiologist, psychotherapist, can you tell me, is that actual fact?
I do believe that the neurons do tend to remember. So whatever network we connect, right? So what we remember are the networks of the neurons that are connected. And they say the more the neurons wire together, right? So it's this idea that the neurons, if we imagine a situation, this brain is starting to see it, believe it, and start to react to it as if it's happened. That's why we say in the moments of trauma, like don't ruminate on that negative thought, but think about something else because you're reinforcing that neural network that becomes stronger and stronger.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. Okay, this is great. I mean, honestly, Mahsa, I could talk to you for hours and hours, but we've done nearly 45 minutes now. And so I think, you know, we've given everybody a lot, but I feel like I know that we're going to continue to be in touch. I just, you know, get that feeling. And so maybe we'll come back for an episode 2. So if people want to have, you know, and have any specific topics that they want to discuss, then please send them to me and I will set out another chat with Mahsa and we will do that. But in the meantime, Mahsa, how can people get in touch with you? You're based in California. So you are, you know, open to all American, you know, and that's the majority of my audience is in America. Hello, lovely Americans. Thank you. But how do they get in touch with you?
So we are Heal and Thrive Psychotherapy and Coaching. You can find us at heal-thrive.com. I'm the therapist. My husband is the ADHD coach, and then we have other therapists and coaches that work for us. If you go on healthrive.com, you can, we do offer free consultation. At the moment, I'm really trying to work with, kind of like the population that I shared with you, but we do have many different people that we want to help anybody that we can. So please don't shy away from calling us or messaging us. We do answer every single call and every single message. We don't like, ignoring people. People can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, all under Heal and Thrive Psychotherapy and Coaching.
Okay, Heal and Thrive. Wonderful. Well, I'll put all of that in the show notes, and then people can just do a one click to whichever of the socials they're into, and also click onto your website if they want to talk to you. Thank you, Mahsa. Thank you so much for today. It's been really fascinating talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to your listeners and viewers. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I really enjoyed speaking with you, and I really much look forward to hearing what your listeners have questions about.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Okay. Thank you.